They're going crazy in Russia right now. We can also see for ourselves that they wouldn't allow other messaging platforms to exist other than this one. We can also see for ourselves that even though he's a supposed dissident, almost all of the uh, Russian pro-war military bloggers are using this for their own purposes. We only know the very superficial headlines of the accusations. We don't know what the details are, but there are many situations in which social media companies and messaging systems are asked by law enforcement to shut down terrorists, pedophiles, drug dealers, etc. And if Telegram was repeatedly asked by the French government to cooperate with them on this and they refused, then I guess there is a reason for a conflict, a reason for a judicial investigation.
There's an interesting twist to this, and that is Telegram and Durov's links to Russia. He was praised, Durov, for refusing to share data with the Kremlin. He fled Russia in 2014 after refusing to comply with Moscow's demands for access to data of Ukrainians protesting against Russia. Why are Russia interested in this? Why are they leaning on some of their senior diplomats to try and secure his release?
Well, you've hit the nail on the head. I mean, it's on one hand, he's presented himself as some type of Russian or anti-Kremlin dissident. But on the other hand, the people who are squawking the loudest is the Kremlin about his arrest. They're desperately trying to get consular access. There's protests going on in Moscow. There are all sorts of statements being made by Russian politicians about how unfair this is and how this violates free speech. And that does raise the question, if the Russian government is so upset by this, then perhaps he isn't the dissident that he presented himself to be. It's all very murky. And from my perspective, as a person who's really against the Russians and has been for a long time, I've never used Telegram because I just don't know whether this messaging system is accessed or in some way supported by the Kremlin.
That's interesting. So you would question Durov's motives. You would question the validity of the platform. It's used, it has been used in the Russia-Ukraine war. It was used to spread plans and information over the recent riots here in the UK. It's sort of generally seen as this more secure platform, isn't it? But you have your doubts about it.
I have grave doubts about it. Anytime you have a business that's Russian owned, whether the person has good intentions or bad intentions, the Russian government and the Russian FSB can, in all sorts of ways, influence how these things are managed through coercion, through kidnapping relatives, through threats. Russia, in a very broad term, is like the Hotel California. You can check out anytime, but you can never leave. And anybody who's got any sort of strong connections with that country, it's questionable whether that person can be, fully not on their side, either because they've chosen to be on the side of the Kremlin or because the Kremlin has put them in an impossible situation. And so there's all sorts of other businesses and organizations that are Russian owned that have turned out to be Kremlin controlled or Kremlin influenced. And I don't know the answer about this one, but I wouldn't be taking the risk myself. And the fact that the Russian government didn't shut down this one and did shut down Signal tells you something.
The Russian government, as I've said, have called for his release. The former president, Dmitry Medvedev, told media, "For all our common enemies now, he is Russian," in reference to Paul Durov, who now has joint citizenship, joint Emirati French citizenship, hence his detention in France. What do we know about Durov? Have you looked at him at all? I know that you're concerned about the platform, and of course he is the founder of it. Tell us more about what you understand of him.
Well, I only know the most basic information, but according to media reports, he's a citizen of the United Arab Emirates and a citizen of France, and apparently, according to those media reports, not a citizen of Russia. And it's very hypocritical for Medvedev, the former president, and to be making these statements about Durov when there's another individual. His name is Ruben Vardanian. Ruben Vardanian was a Russian banker, a very important Russian banker, and a Russian citizen and an Armenian citizen. He gave up his Russian citizenship in order to get involved in Armenian politics. He's now sitting in an Azerbaijani jail, having been arrested. And the Russians are saying, well, he's not a Russian citizen. We've got nothing to do with him anymore. And so, on one hand, you've got them, squawking like chickens about Durov, and on the other hand, they're saying nothing about Vardanyan. And it just tells you that there's something special about this Durov guy, and they're particularly worried about this Durov guy, and that just raises red flags everywhere, as far as I'm concerned.
So this is really interesting. He's either much more linked to Russia than we might think, either that, or maybe he's been compromised by Russia. They have something on him, or this is Russia with a bit of misinformation, sort of turning the tables on him by making it look like they're still concerned about him and they want to secure his release. I mean, which of those three might be more likely?
It's impossible to say with these people. I mean, whenever there's something Russian, there's always like three layers of conspiracy. In the West, almost everything is as it seems. In Russia, conspiracies are everywhere, and nothing is as it seems. And so it's really impossible to know what's going on here, other than what we can see ourselves. And what we can see ourselves is that they're going crazy in Russia right now. We can also see for ourselves that they wouldn't allow other messaging platforms to exist other than this one. We can also see for ourselves that even though he's a supposed dissident, almost all of the Russian pro-war military bloggers are using this for their own purposes. We can also see that this is a platform that was used in exacerbating riots in the UK and other things. That's what we can see on the surface. What we know below that, only time will tell. But it's not a clear story. It's not a free speech story, as far as I can see. This is a very murky story involving the Kremlin in some way, shape, or form. And as time will tell, and as the charges become clear, and as the Russian government's actions play themselves out, perhaps we'll know more.
What do you imagine this means for other social media platform owners? Is it different for Elon Musk?
Well, I think it's the same for everybody, which is that these people need to cooperate with countries that have laws. And so, I mean, just to give you some sense that Google was just shut down in Russia, and they just took away all of their money because they didn't supposedly cooperate with the Russians. So it's kind of it's highly hypocritical for them, the Russians, to then get really upset because Telegram wasn't cooperating with the French. I mean, everybody has to cooperate with whichever country they're supposed to be operating in, and of course Elon Musk should be cooperating with countries. And I know that he had to withdraw from Brazil because they were saying he wasn't cooperating there, and that's not free speech. They have laws. He wasn't cooperating with them, and there you go.